Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. This week my supporters on Patreon voted for Zaffai and the Tempests, a 7-mana 5/7, saying once during each of our turns we may cast an instant or sorcery spell from our hand without paying its mana cost. So we want to pair Zaffai with lots of expensive instants and sorceries. In particular, we're trying to enter the infinite in this deck, which is normally a 12-mana sorcery, letting us draw cards equal to the number of cards in our library, so we get to just draw our entire deck, and then we get to return one card from our hand on the top of our library. And then the most straightforward way to end the game is by casting Thassa's Oracle. If you don't like Thassa's Oracle, you could also do it with Laboratory Maniac to accomplish the same goal pretty much. So that's really the plan. Play Zaffai, cast some big spells, and ideally one of those is Enter the Infinite to win the game on the following turn at the very least. So then if we take a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting with mana acceleration, because we do want to get up to 7 mana in the first place, so we'll need plenty of mana artifacts to get there, as well as some of the new ritual effects, which can also speed up the process significantly, especially Jeska's Will can set up a turn 3 or 4 Zaffai already, so that's one of our better inclusions. Then we also have some other treasure makers, which can also generate a bit of extra mana to set up our commander on the following turn. Most of these will draw cards as well, so they can also help cycle through the deck. And then we've got some interaction, some burn spells, often sweepers, dealing damage to every creature in play. Zaffai has 7 toughness, so can survive a lot of these burn spells as well. And then we've got our remaining card draw effects, lots of cheap cantrips, as well as a few tutor effects like Mystical Tutor and Solve the Equation, which can specifically get your Enter the Infinite, so you can immediately cast it for free after resolving your commander. And then we get to the big spells that we're looking to cast for free with our commander. There's a few extra turn cards. I try to limit the number of them since we already played a lot of extra turn cards in the Quandrix deck recently, but you could technically play all of them, but just playing a handful here that have some additional effects when we cast them. And then we've got, of course, Enter the Infinite, but some other heavy hitters like the Improvisation Capstone and Magma Opus, which has a versatility of making a treasure early on. And then we've got a few counter spells, just playing some of the best ones, like Force of Will, a recent addition to the format, as well as Wash Away, a 1-mana answer to opposing commanders, and the 2-mana counter spell. Having some free counter spells like Force of Will and Pact of Negation is also important after resolving Enter the Infinite, to make sure that your opponent cannot interact in any meaningful way to disrupt your game plan. And then our miscellaneous section has some fun mythic rare enchantments like Arcane Bombardment and 1000-Year Storm, which can also be fun alternate win conditions if we get to combo off with them. And then we've got Thassa's Oracle as our win condition for Enter the Infinite, and the Vile Duplication can also be a fun one, making a non-legendary copy of Zaffai, so now we get to potentially cast 2 free spells per turn, and Mystic's Mastery can also be a way to maybe cast an expensive spell for just 4 mana, since we've got a lot of discard outlets to get them in the graveyard. So that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, I mentioned Ritual effect. Pyretic Ritual is 2 mana to make 3, so it nets us 1 mana overall to speed up the process of casting our commander. Jeska's Will is the big one, as it makes a red mana for each card in the opponent's hand if we'd like, so the sooner we cast it, the better. And then Seething Song is 3 mana to make 5, so it nets us 2 mana overall. And then I'm also playing with Pentat Prism, another recent addition, can get some charge counters with Sunburst, and then we can use those charge counters on future turns perhaps to cast our commander. And then we've got our typical ramp artifacts like Izzet Signet, the Talisman, Arcane Signet of course, and then Cold Steel Heart, Guardian Idol, Mind Stone, Solar Transformer, and the Iron Crag, avoiding creatures that make mana since they're more susceptible to removal, and they also die to our own sweeper effect. Then we also have the new Tablet of Discovery, which has been awesome in any deck trying to cast expensive instants and sorceries. Coalition Relic can also maybe generate an extra mana. Horn Power Stone makes 2 mana once we get to untap with it. Hedron Archive also immediately taps for double colorless, can also draw cards if we need that instead. And then Gilded Lotus can immediately tap for 3 mana of any one color, so can immediately use it to cast more spells, including some of our colored instants and sorceries. Then our treasure makers include Seize the Spoils at 3 mana, discard to draw 2 and make 1 treasure. Prismari command can do something similar, can also use it to destroy artifacts. And then at 4 mana there's Big Score, Pirate's Pillage and Windfall, all discarding to draw 2 and make 2 treasure tokens, so these can also maybe set up Zaffai on the following turn. Ashling's command has multiple modes, but will often still make 2 treasures and draw 2 cards with it. Then we've got our interaction, Lightning Bolt as the only cheap spot removal spell, and then it's mostly sweepers. Brotherhood's End could also deal with artifacts, but is mostly dealing 3 to creatures and planeswalkers. Same with Sweltering Suns, which can also be cycled. Storm's Wrath deals 4. Burn Down the House deals 5, but can also make Devil tokens with it, so that can also double up as an alternate win condition. And then Ill-Timed Explosion can draw cards, but can also discard cards to deal damage equal to the discarded mana value. Splatter Technique, another versatile card that can either draw 4 or deal 4 damage. And then Blasphemous Act can also be a nice board wipe, dealing 13 to each creature, so this is the only sweeper that would also destroy our own commander. And then our card draw includes a few cantrips like Brainstorm. We've got Ponder and Preordain as some of the most powerful ones. These also play very well with our fetch lands to shuffle away unwanted cards. Then Mystical Tutor is great at getting Enter the Infinite, same with Solve the Equation. And then Expressive Iterations, just a nice 2-for-1. Senar can also be used to tutor up or Enter the Infinite if we cast the Wild Idea for 5 mana. And then a stock up another powerful card draw spell. Then our big spells include a few extra turn cards. Temporal Sundering can also bounce something in the process. Epiphany makes a pair of bird tokens. And then Expropriate can potentially take 2 extra turns or steal an opposing permanent. And then we've got Upheaval, which is also pretty recent on Arena, and this is a pretty good deck to try it out, as we've got plenty of mana artifacts and treasure makers to build up our mana, cast an Upheaval, and then with a bunch of floating mana we can quickly redeploy our hand and hopefully take over. Then a Rapturous Moment is another nice one to cast while you're storming off with your 1000-Year Storm, for instance, as it can draw a bunch of cards and make mana in the process. Then we've got Seagate Restoration, which can also be used as a card draw spell, but can also be played as a land. Wisdom of Ages will return all instants and sorceries from our graveyard back to our hand, so it can also be a way to get back and Enter the Infinite if it got countered. And then the Improvisation Capstone is another nice one, as it'll be cast for free each turn going forward, thanks to Paradigm, so that can also accrue a lot of value. Dig Through Time we can potentially cast on the cheap by exiling cards from our graveyard with Delve, but also great to cast for free, looking at the top 7 and selecting the 2 best cards. And then Magma Opus can be discarded early on to make a treasure, but is also totally serviceable as an 8 mana spell or as something we can cast for free with Zaffai, as it has a lot of useful modes, including making a 4/4 elemental, so that can also be another win condition. And then we mentioned all of these already. Our counter spells include some free ones like Pact and Force of Will, Counterspell and Wash Away, so all the classics. And then our enchantments like 1000-Year Storm and Arcane Bombardment can also be very fun if we can get them going. Mythic's Mastery has good synergy with those expensive spells and our discard outlets that make treasure tokens. The Vile Duplication can make a non-legendary Zaffai, so we can cast 2 spells for free. And then Thassa's Oracle is often the last spell we'll cast in every game to win alongside Enter the Infinite. The mana base is mostly just mana fixing. A few utility lands like Mistrise Village to make our spells uncounterable can be useful, as well as Cavern of Souls to make our commander uncounterable. The Gemstone Caverns can also give us a mana boost, and then it's mostly fetch lands to fix our colors and to enable cantrips like Brainstorm and Ponder, so we have an extra shuffle effect, and we can always get a Thundering Falls, which enters tapped but lets us Surveil to improve our draw steps. There's also Steam Vents, and of course plenty of basics. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing Kavaero, so blue-black Reanimator. We have a counter spell to maybe help, no red mana. Overall, kind of a clunky draw. So I think I mulligan, even though counterspell is good interaction. Okay, this is promising with 2 ramp artifacts and Pyretic Ritual. Okay, maybe cast my commander around turn 4, take an extra turn with Epiphany and take it from there. Our opponent could have some disruption in the form of discard effects, but they'll also be looking to set up their graveyard initially. Upheaval could be spicy. Especially good with cards like Talisman and Cold Steel Heart that we can quickly redeploy. Since this bounces all lands back. So usually the way you want to play it is cast it for free with Zaffai, floating a bunch of mana first, so you can maybe redeploy your commander or cast some other spells, like maybe replaying your artifacts. And then ideally you haven't played a land for a turn yet, so you can quickly pull ahead. Now our opponent surveilling with the sewers keeps on top, and we drew Jeska's Will. Okay, opponent currently holding 7 cards in hand. So, yeah, I mean, I could technically already cast my commander here, assuming this resolves. Could also Pyretic Ritual first to test out the waters, but if it doesn't resolve, it would be wasted. So let's try it. That works. Now, I guess I still play the Talisman first, in case they are holding like a Force of Will. At least I'll have an extra artifact in play. Could also play around Daze by casting Pyretic Ritual first, but if they just have a Wash Away, that would be kind of a waste. So, yeah, let's try this. Opponent did indeed have a Force of Will. Alright, that's too bad. So back to the command zone. It's gonna take me a while to redeploy now for 9 mana. So in the meantime we can maybe foretell the Epiphany, or consider casting the Upheaval. Opponent with a Kaito. Yeah, casting Upheaval now would not be great when Kaito phases out. Opponent did discard a Summon Bahamut. So next turn, at the very least, they would be able to use Kavaero to destroy a non-land permanent, setting me back another mana. So that's not ideal. But what's the alternative here? I can Upheaval, set us both back, but our opponent still has an active Planeswalker. That doesn't seem very good. I guess I can Pyretic Ritual into Epiphany. So that's probably the best I've got. And then now I could maybe Upheaval and still play a land after, but then I also lose the birds. So yeah, I think I just play a land and pass. Kaito pluses.
Now, what do we have here?
I'm hoping they go after a bird, but I don't see them doing that here. Goes for Cold Steel Heart. And Expropriates is not getting cast anytime soon. So, yeah, maybe this is an Upheaval turn. Although, all I can do is play a land. But otherwise I'm just gonna lose more stuff. So, may as well. Play a land and pass. So it's like we're starting a fresh game. Opponent can discard something to hand size to maybe reanimate on turn 4 again. 1000 Year Storm could be fun, but pretty far from setting that up. Bushuka Bog exiles my graveyard, which could be relevant. And a fetch. So I can surveil. Opponent will draw this card. So I guess Bahamut is exiled at least, so they are looking for something else to get in the graveyard. And they haven't discarded any scary creatures yet. So yeah, maybe this second Kavaero won't be all that devastating. Shivan Reef I can go without. And a Splatter Technique. So yeah, can cast that to draw 4 cards. And then Cavern of Souls would have been great to make this uncounterable. And now probably discard a land. So we're making some progress. Storm's Wrath will also be able to deal with whatever Kavaero tries to copy. And next turn I could attempt a 1000-Year Storm. It gets better if we find some cheaper instant and sorcery to kick things off, and then maybe make a bunch of treasure with Ashling's command so we can keep the ball rolling. But it's gonna Frantic Search, so they could discard something big and then still reanimate it right now. Well, still just discarding 2 lands, so our opponent failing to find some curve toppers to get in the graveyard. Inquisition is gonna miss. Only have expensive spells. Alright, so all things considered, I can't complain. So, could try and get the Cavern down since they know about it now. And then still go for a 1000-Year Storm. Big score is a pretty big draw here now that we potentially get to Storm in play. Anything that makes treasures and draws cards is the perfect combination to storm off. The enchantment resolves. So then now we just want to find some 1-mana cantrip like a Ponder, Brainstorm, that kind of thing. So that if I cast a big score, I already get 4 treasures out of it. A Wisdom of Ages. Our graveyard did get exiled, so it's not going to be very good here. Okay, I mean I can still try comboing a little bit. Start with big score and then Ashling's command after. Could work if there's no interaction. Do I keep the Mountain or Storm's Wrath? I guess with Wisdom I can get the Wrath back, but it may be an important answer to Kavaero. And big score resolves, draw Sonar. And yeah, let's Ashling's command. Draw 2, make 2 treasures. Which is draw 4, make 4 treasures now. And maybe we can keep it going. And it does feel like they might have a counterspell in hand, but... And Blasphemous Act, Brotherhood's End. And then some more mana artifacts. So yeah, nothing amazing for me to cast. Can play Coalition Relic, or I can just save the treasures. Discarding Blasphemous Act, Brotherhood's End, and that's it. Could have still kept him just to have something cheap to increase my storm count. Assuming, of course, I just deal 3 damage. But I think we'll be okay. Take my turn, opponent's still not doing anything. Arcane Bombardment is a nice one too. So options aplenty. Could try an uncounterable Zaffai, and then cast a free Expropriate, which our opponent may fight over. So that's where I might want to increase my storm count first, so I get to cast multiple Expropriates. So yeah, this only tracks other instants and sorceries I've cast. So maybe I wait another turn on Zaffai, just to ensure that I get to fully combo off, as opposed to maybe getting the Expropriate countered and kind of fizzling out. So sure, let's try the Arcane Bombardment as well. Opponent will Force of Negation that one, so that's what they were holding on to this entire time. Do I play Sonar? Feels like it might get removed. I think I save my treasures. I've got some big spells in hand. Collect the Brutality. Okay, that was a pretty good draw. Can take away my Expropriate. So now I don't have a way to take extra turns until we Wisdom of Ages to get it back. But our opponent does have a Cling to Dust to exile it from our graveyard. So that's probably what they're looking into now. Alright, so no extra turns will be had for now. Opponent is finally tapped out. So we can still do some damage here with Sonar into Wild Idea. So, and what's my preferred sequence? Wisdom of Ages is still decent here, getting back my Treasuremakers. So, yeah, let's go Zaffai using Cavern into a free Wisdom. Opponent maybe has a Snuff out here. Dismember, that's not enough by itself. And our opponent scoops it up. Alright, fair enough, so they did indeed have removal for Sonar. But yeah, once we resolve the Wisdom, get back all those card draw Treasuremakers, still have 5 mana left. So then from here I can kind of keep storming off with Thousand Year Storm and pretty much seal the deal. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Sephiroth, so mono black sacrifice. My hand is a little clunky with lots of 4+ mana cards, no early acceleration. Do have a Force of Will, pitching Splatter Technique potentially, but I don't expect Blasphemous Act to be great since our opponent's already kind of sacrificing their creatures. So I'll take a mulligan. This one has potential. Mystical Tutor might want to get Enter the Infinite to combo with Thassa's Oracle. So for now we can name, let's go with, I don't think we have any overlapping types. Doesn't matter. Go with Bard. Play Talisman, and then I could already Mystical Tutor for Enter the Infinite, because with Jeska's Will I could already ramp out my commander. Opponent with Jadar, that's fine. So, yeah. Did we just win basically on turn 3? It's going to be turn 4 when we actually cast the Oracle. But yeah, let's Enter the Infinite. And then make sure we've got the right colors. Play Jeska's Will, making mana. So I want to target my opponent, making 6 mana in the process. Just enough for Zaffai, and then Enter the Infinite for 0. Okay, I get to put 1 card back. Can make it Thassa's Oracle. Pass a turn, and now we have Force of Will as well as a Pact of Negation, although this one we might struggle to pay for. I guess there are some other rituals I can cast at instant speed. And get to untap. Opponent's got a response. Sheoldred's Edict. Yeah, I mean, I could counter this, doesn't really matter. Just let it go. Back to the command zone. Draw. Play Thassa's Oracle. If I can find it. This might be a challenge. Alright, it was at the very bottom. And then now I can protect it with whatever counter spells I need. But yeah, even if they were to remove it in response, since our library is empty, we don't need any devotion to win the game. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Indris, the Hydrostatic Surge. 6 mana, 5/5. Makes a bunch of lightning bolts with Storm. Okay, pretty good card. Our hand has Gilded Lotus plus Upheaval, could be a nice pairing. Sonar to maybe tutor something up. Yeah, I'll try it. Start with a Surveil land, looking for more cheap mana acceleration. And I'll keep a land. Don't want to be too picky. Do need to get up to 5 mana for Lotus at the very least. Best case scenario, draw some cheaper instants and sorceries to make treasure. A tablet's not bad. Although our opponent with a Brawl is also quite threatening. Okay, Prismatic Vista will go to waste. But next turn I can already play the Lotus, or technically even Upheaval. But I think I want to get some more artifacts in play before we set that up. Opponent passes, Arcane Bombardment, the draw. So yeah, possible our opponent's sitting on some counter spells. Good Wild Idea here, and then still tap Sonar, making a treasure. Good Splatter Technique to draw. And then if it gets countered, it'll be in the graveyard for Arcane Bombardment later. So yeah, let's maybe start there, playing a land first to play around Daze. And draw 4 cards. So don't really mind if this gets countered. Opponent's gonna Repulse Sonar. Can still make a treasure. So then I could still maybe recast it if I really want. Now Pentat Prism's also tempting as a way to ramp out my commander. Yeah, Pentat Prism is pretty sweet with Upheaval as well. And that resolves, pass a turn. Opponent with a Talisman. They're probably keeping up interaction for my commander here. They're gonna into the Royal, bouncing the Pentat Prism. So a lot of bounce spells so far. Yeah, I mean I can make mana response, but I'm not gonna be using it. So probably off the Upheaval plan, since while I could Upheaval and play a land, that's about it, so that's not particularly exciting. Now I could go for something like Arcane Bombardment or Gilded Lotus. A Lotus into Spoils could be decent. Or maybe Lotus into Spoils into Prism. Some combination thereof. This tablet can make double red, this can make blue. Spoils, discarding a land. And then I could still Pentat Prism using the treasure. And then play Sonar. Okay. So we'll see what our opponents got. Hoping they just tap out for their commander. And then I get to combo off with Upheaval. Can make a treasure and float some mana before the Upheaval fully resolves. Opponent does have some mana artifacts of their own, but I should have more mana to rebuild faster. Another mana engine with a Crime Novelist. Opponent passes with a blue mana up, which could represent like a wash away. So then I'm not really incentivized to play Zaffai, but I could certainly Upheaval. So wait on playing my land, start floating mana. Go in full control, cast Upheaval. Make a treasure. Opponent had a Swan Song to counter it. Alright, that's unfortunate. So no Upheaval. Wild Idea is a sorcery, could have technically gotten like a Force of Will to protect it. So now I could try and go for Zaffai, although there's no card I would necessarily want to cast after. So I think we go Arcane Bombardment, and then I'll be able to brainstorm in the opponent's turn to trigger it. And then we'll see what happens. Could have cast it right away, but if we hit Upheaval, things get pretty crazy. Opponent's gonna breach. That's fine. Goes for Impulse. So they really want to transform Brawl. Yeah, I'll let that happen. Finds Brawl, Saloon Division. And a Mind's Desire to storm off. Okay, so I guess we'll wait and see what they hit. That's a land. That's a River's Rebuke, that one's painful. And a Stormcatch Mentor. Alright, opponent's gonna Rebuke. May as well Brainstorm now. And we hit a Seize the Spoils. Is that worth casting? Think so. Probably gonna cast a Blasphemous Act soon. Find a Capstone. And then Seething Song's pretty good. Alright, so send those packing. Could again float a mana with the treasure, I suppose.
Time to reinvent myself.
Are transformed, gets to plus, but they're out of spells to cast. Now that Rahl transformed, Blasphemous Act is a little bit less impactful, to be fair. But yeah, we can still make some moves. Bombardment still has a chance of hitting an Upheaval. Could just play my Commander and then play the Capstone for free, which is a decent baseline. Yeah, maybe go Seething Song into Zaffai, or I can even go Lotus into Zaffai. And then play a free Capstone. Hitting Explosion and Mindstone. So then we want to discard a 3 or 4 drop ideally, and our opponent scoops it up, does not want to play this one out. I'll take it, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing Old Stickfingers, typically a cheesy Reanimator deck trying to combine Arden with Ulamog to annihilate our board. So counter spells are usually useful. This hand is a bit light on blue mana, a few too many expensive spells. So while we have the counter spell, I think we still mulligan. This one is not great. No ramp, no counter spells. Just an iteration to try and find one. I think we can do better. Alright, this has a lot of ramp. Do I keep all of it? Maybe I ditch the Power Stone, hope to ramp Idol into Archive, and Brainstorm to find some big Curve Topper. Then again, our opponent could also have some discard spells, so then having the redundant ramp cards could still be useful. But, yeah, close call. I guess maybe I actually get rid of the Archive, since Power Stone still taps for 2 anyways. Sure. And then I want to preserve the fetch land to shuffle after we Brainstorm if possible. Epiphany is a big spell. Can also use Brainstorm to now hide any of our key cards from an opposing discard effect. But of course, since we were on the draw, they could have started with one. So they're usually looking to cast Stickfingers for X equals 2, so they can put both Arden and Ulamog in the graveyard. And since Arden exiles the creature, Ulamog will have something expensive in exile to count towards the Annihilator. And then they can usually annihilate our entire board if we don't have a way to stop it. But there are quite a few interaction points where we can maybe disrupt them. But yeah, I guess next turn it's Stickfingers, and turn after we might get comboed. And I don't necessarily have an answer in hand yet. So there's Ulamog and Arden. So I think I have to brainstorm, look for a counterspell. And that's not it. Can still draw with a Preordain. Although I guess Guardian Idol being colorless also is limiting my options, since 2 mana counterspells no longer gonna work. So yeah, there's very few answers left. So maybe I'll just go for a Power Stone anyway. Could of course still draw Force of Will technically. Just gonna hope they do not have a reanimation spell in hand. Alright, opponent with Avarice to draw a few cards. They could still have a 2 mana reanimation spell here, or even a 1 mana reanimate. A Pantap Prism. Alright, that's fine. So we get to survive for another turn. And this is the turn where we get to cast Zaffai into Epiphany. So that buys us another turn. Alright, so we'll start with a Preordain. I'll just pay 1 mana for this. Solve the equation, that's a good one. So then I'll pay to cast the equation, and then enter the infinite for free. And in fact I can just cast the Thassa's Oracle right now to win the game. Just need to find it, put 1 card back, play another blue source, and now find the Oracle. That's the mini game we get to play. There it is. With Force of Negation and Force of Will as backup. Our Devotion is 3, so plenty to win here. So yeah, definitely dodged a bullet. If our opponent had some reanimation spell, our board would have gotten annihilated. So very thin margins. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, facing Kenrith, the Returned King, so 5-color good stuff deck. Our hand is maybe missing some 2 mana acceleration. Could try and find it with Ponder. Or I can make a treasure with Magma Opus, I suppose. Play the Archive, and then try and set up our commander with Tutor getting Enter the Infinite. We'll see how this works out. Possible our opponent is playing some counterspells of their own. And I think I'm still happy with turn 1 Ponder, since I can use a Surveil to get rid of one of the cards, if I maybe like the rest. This hand seems kinda mediocre. Doesn't have any ramp. Duplication's only really good once we already have Zaffai in play. So I will shuffle, finding an expressive iteration. This card is better if we cast it on turn 3, so we can still play a land and put another card into our hand as well. So yeah, can discard Magma Opus, or I can just play a Surveil land. Now I guess with Preordain, I like the Preordain into my Thundering Falls. Could also Thundering Falls first. Sure. Land I'll keep. So then don't necessarily need the fetch land afterwards. Opponent keeping up 2 mana. Yeah, could go for Magma Opus, but I think Iteration makes sense now, and then we can just cast Archive next turn. Opponent's gonna Memory Lapse it. So I could still Mystical Tutor if I'd like, and get Enter the Infinite, but yeah, opponent seems to be playing some counter spells, so it's not gonna be that simple. Would still love to resolve the Hedron Archive. Yeah, could also just Iteration again. Although if Hedron Archive resolves, there's a chance I can already cast my Capstone next turn. So the upside's quite high. Opponent does have an end of turn play, maybe a way to destroy my artifact. A Leyline Binding will exile it. That's too bad. So yeah, gotta keep hitting my land drops with the iteration. Going for Magma Opus making a treasure would have backfired since they had the perfect answer to the archive. And now Flage, recently banned in Modern, but can still have fun with it in Brawl. Cavern of Souls is a huge draw. Try and keep it in hand so our opponent doesn't necessarily expect it. So let's iteration first. Hoping to find at least one land. Okay, perfect. So put Cold Steel in hand. Get rid of Explosion. Exile the land now. So I can play Cold Steel. Still have Mystical Tutor up. So technically I could end of turn tutor for Enter the Infinite, untap, cast an uncounterable Zaffai. But our opponents got their own tutor here. So they might get a free counterspell, which while it doesn't counter Zaffai, can counter whatever spell I try to cast for free. And goes for a Traumatic Critique, that's fine. So we'll see if they tap out for anything. Doesn't look like it. Still think I'm down to Mystical Tutor for Enter the Infinite. Or I could get like a Force of Will, which I can cast pitching Magma Opus to ensure the capstone resolves. That's also reasonable. Yeah, maybe we take the slower approach. That doesn't just lose to a counterspell. So this can name Bard. Play Zaffai. This one they cannot counter in ordinary fashion. And then now cast my free capstone. Opponent wants to critique for 0, that's fine. Discarding the Songcrafter, and we hit a big score. I don't think I cast a big score, because then I will be shields down on Force of Will. So I'll politely decline. So our opponent discarding a Songcrafter Mage. Pretty far from escaping Flage. Void Rent. Cannot be countered. Yeah, that's a nice answer. So Force of Will not being too helpful, but we still resolved the capstone, which is what really matters. Still have a force to counter whatever big finisher the opponent tries to cast. And now I'll take a big score, but we'll see here. Alright, not bad. Talisman into Splatter Technique to draw 4. Find Wash Away, Epiphany. So yeah, we're doing it. And our opponent scoops it up, can take an extra turn, build up my mana, and before you know it, we can replay our commander once again. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Quintorius, History Chaser. Gonna make lots of 3/2 Spirit tokens. Our hand is missing some 2 mana acceleration, maybe Ponder can find it. And then Windfall to ramp out Capstone could be fun. Yeah, I mean, there's potential here. Our hand is really gonna come together if we can find some 2 mana accelerants. Did not get there. Force of Will pitching Enter the Infinite is quite tempting, however, since that can delay Quintorius by a few turns. And then I'll be hitting my land drops for Windfall into my 7 drops. So I'll decline to shuffle anyway. So we'll need to find an alternate win condition to Enter the Infinite if we end up pitching it. Opponent with a Containment Construct. Good synergy with Quintorius. So now we might potentially draw a different blue card I can pitch, so we can keep Enter the Infinite. And we're not too far from hard casting a Force of Will for 5 mana, but that's usually not the plan. and then ideally draw a different blue card, and then I could cast Zaffai into a free Enter the Infinite, which could seal the deal. To be fair, I don't have to absolutely counter Quintorius. Opponent's just gonna pass a turn. So then I could pitch the Capstone to ensure more land drops, but we're pretty likely to draw more. Small chance they have some white counter spells as well. Pyretic Ritual could be useful. Our opponent does have a bunch of mana up where they can maybe remove Zaffai, but I'll still get to cast at least one spell with it. So yeah, I think I'm down to a Ritual into Zaffai. And then the question is Enter the Infinite. I will not have Force of Will as backup. Or I can just go for kind of the value Capstone. Can pay for Mana Tithe. Orim's Chance. Interesting. So their plan is to prevent me from casting something for free, at which point they can untap and maybe remove Zaffai. Okay, so I could just counter the Orim's Chance with Force and then resolve the Capstone. Then I lose out on Enter the Infinite. But if they do have an answer to Zaffai, I'm going to be very far from ever recasting it. Of course, I could just fight over the removal spell, but our opponent could also just cast it end of turn like a Get Lost. And then I wouldn't be able to cast a counter spell. So I think I actually do fight over this. Which means we're off the Enter the Infinite plan, since that's exiled. So then I'm just hoping to get enough value out of the Capstone and eventually find a different way to win the game. So we'll see if our opponent did indeed have removal at the ready. Alright, opponent's just gonna scoop it up, so I guess that worked out. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Aziza, looking to copy their spells by tapping some creatures. Sadly, don't get to start with Gemstone Caverns, but we still have a functional draw. So, can start with a tapped Village, not looking to Mystical Tutor right away. May end up getting Enter the Infinite to go infinite. For now, we can play the Signets. And then next turn, maybe Pirate's Pillage first. Sets up the mana to cast our commander, maybe immediately play free Restoration. Or I can be patient and set up Enter the Infinite with Mystical Tutor first. Opponent with a Skrelv's Hive, that's fine. Seething Song was quite the draw. So this makes 5 mana. So still one short of casting Zaffai. So yeah, this might be a Mystical Tutor turn, and then next turn I just get to Enter the Infinite. Sure. Could also still Pirate's Pillage if I really want. Discarding the lands, and then use a treasure on Mystical Tutor. Opponent taps out for their commander. So the coast seems pretty clear. And get Enter the Infinite. Take my draw. And then Seething Song into Zaffai. Into an Enter the Infinite. And now the hard part is finding Thassa's Oracle. Of course, don't have to put the Oracle back on top, can just keep it in hand. And pass a turn. So our opponent gets to take their turn while I search for Thassa's Oracle. There it is. And then, even without any blue devotion, we'll still win the game with it. We have a few free counter spells to back it up, like Pact of Negation and Force of Will. Not gonna try to find those in my hands, since then I'll lose the Thassa's Oracle. So Get Lost resolves. Could technically find my Force of Will, but yeah, there's no real point. Plus our opponent gets to copy it. So can't think of too many ways this goes wrong. Play my land first just in case. Play Oracle. And there we go. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Raph and Mikey, Troublemakers. So both decks are trying to get to 7 mana as quickly as possible. This hand's not a bad way to go about it. Hope to find some counter spells along the way, and maybe some big spells to cast for free. Being on the play also a huge deal in this matchup, because our opponent can potentially end the game in just 1 or 2 attacks. Pact of Negation I'm happy to have. Even if it'll cost me 5 mana on the following turn, could make the difference between losing on the spot or getting another turn. Opponent with Signet into Utopia Sprawl, so that was a nice 1-2 punch. Alright, second Mind Stone into Stock Up. And solve the equation and enter the infinite, both among the 5 cards. So can just take Enter the Infinite and then Wash Away, gives us a nice answer to Raph and Mikey. I just gotta hope they can make it uncounterable somehow. Terror of the Peaks is acceptable. And a Pyretic Ritual lets me cast Zaffai right now. So that was another lucky draw. Play it, enter the Infinite. Put a card back. Pass a turn. And then I'll need to start looking for my Force of Will. I found it right next to Thassa's Oracle. I guess our opponent's still 1 mana short of casting Raph and Mikey, going for a Cursed Mirror. That seems fine. Copy Zaffai, deal 5. Don't need my commander anymore. And an Ironcrag feat. Alright, so they did actually have a ritual to then cast Raph and Mikey, but since Ironcrag feat prevents them from casting anything else, I'm now guaranteed to resolve this Force of Will, untap Oracle, win the game. So yeah, they did end up having a pretty impressive turn, casting a free Ironcrag feat of my own Zaffai. Gotta find my Thassa's Oracle again. And there it is. And even if they have removal, it doesn't matter. Probably should have played a blue source first, just to keep up an extra counter spell in case of any redirect lightning shenanigans, but still had my Pact of Negation as well. So yeah, Zaffai is pretty busted if you can reliably get access to Enter the Infinite, especially the most straightforward way to end the game in Brawl, once you get to cast it for free and then just win with your Thassa's Oracle, sometimes even on the same turn or just on the following turn after drawing a bunch of free counter spells as well. So yeah, overall a very powerful strategy. Of course, it does rely on resolving some big spells, so if your opponent is also playing counter spells, things get more tricky, and if your opponent is on a very aggressive deck, they can also maybe go underneath your big plays and kill you before you manage to cast your commander in the first place. So it's definitely not an infallible strategy, but it's certainly up there among some of the most powerful things you can do in the format. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.